let's start with the fundamentals of training. So here, we say that training is not an FYI. Why do you think that we say this? Why do you think it's not an FYI? What do we mean by FYI? Let's start with that.
Is FYI for your information only?
Yes, that's correct. So why do you think we say that training is not just an FYI?
Training is a must and not just an FYI or not just for your information. It should be incorporated in all the learnings that you have. So training is a must, not an FYI.
Okay, I agree. What about you, Steve? You were about to say something too.
Well, actually, JP already it's the same with JP, right? So it's just not an information, it's a gathered learnings and also lesson teach in every trainers, and you can be trained not only in here but also in experience as well.
Okay, I agree. If you think about it, training does not only apply to a corporate setting or to a workplace, right? It is, if you think about it, it's a lifestyle. You can apply training in pretty much any aspect of your life, whether it be raising your kids, training maybe the house help to do stuff around your house, right? It's incorporated in, if not most or all of the, if not all, most of the aspects of our lives. Now, we have to remember that for a training to be considered effective, there should be successful transfer of knowledge, skills, and behaviors. So that's why we say it's a lifestyle. Okay. Then lastly, once your trainees have, or once the transfer is successful, then that's when we develop the competency. Okay. So what is competency? Here, we say that competency is the knowledge and skills needed to do a job well. Remember, not just needed to do a job, but to do a job well, okay? As trainers, we want our trainees to be able to be independent, right? And to be able to hopefully lead or train other people in the future. That's why we want them to be able to do their jobs really well. Okay, so I would like you guys to look at the two questions on this slide. All of us here are adult learners, right? So when you start facilitating your future classes, I'd like you guys to put on your learner hat and remember these questions, as your trainees may have similar responses to your answers. So this will help you in the long run because adult learning is more learner focused, okay? And the essence of adult learning is to make sense of different experiences, okay? So adult learners, you have to remember that if not all of us, most of us learn best by experiencing and by doing stuff, okay? Instead of the old school way of just memorizing like what we were taught in high school. Okay. Right, so who are your adult learners? Adult learners are experienced, goal-oriented, practical, flexible, and critical thinkers. That's the beauty of adult learners. At the same time, since adult learners are already experienced, it may be difficult for us trainers sometimes to break barriers, right? Because let's face it, a lot of us are already stubborn when it comes to handling different situations and learning new processes, because we already think that what we're doing is already working. So why change it, right? Like what JP said earlier, change takes effort and it takes energy, okay? So what are the different fundamentals of adult learning? First off is active participation. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you or all of you have already conducted trainings, right? Again, adult learners tend to be more engaged and more motivated when they are included in the learning process. Okay, so it cannot be done the way we were taught in high school or college or grade school, where the teacher was the only one who did all of the talking, right? Like what we are doing right now, I ask you guys questions and I ask you guys to share your experiences because I believe that every one of us can learn from each other. Okay, next, meaning and relevance. Adults are more motivated to learn when they see the reason behind everything, right? I remember one of you shared earlier that adults have to know the whys or the reason behind the things that we are trying to teach them. Okay, next, holistic learning. What do we mean by holistic learning? Any ideas?
It's a respect for all.
Sorry? I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't catch that. It's a,
I think it's a respect for all, all.
okay, I agree. So when we say holistic learning, it takes a holistic approach. What do we mean by that? We consider the whole person and their entire needs, right? Remember, going back a few slides earlier, learning is both cognitive and emotional. So when we say learning should be holistic, we have to take those things or all of those things into consideration. So you have to consider their backgrounds, their different experiences, um, their learning types, right? Okay. Let me know if I am going too fast, okay? If we're moving too fast so that we can slow down a bit and don't be shy to ask questions. Next, multi-sensory learning. So what do we mean by that? Again, adult learners have different learning styles and preferences. So you have to also get to know your trainees. Are they particular with music? Some trainees I have discovered when I was starting training that they can focus more on exams and assessments when I play music in the background. So that means a lot of them or some of them are auditory learners, right? And a lot of the trainees, a lot of trainers also forget that some adult learners are visual learners. So they enjoy videos, they enjoy fun presentations. So your presentations have to be colorful. So those are some of the things that you have to take into consideration. Next, adult learners are also concerned with first and last impressions. Next, practice and reinforcement. What do we mean by practice and reinforcement? So all adult learners benefit from opportunities to practice and reinforce the knowledge that you teach them. So you can do this by including different activities, maybe role plays, right? Especially if you have a class who is very quiet. If you have a class full of introverts who don't want to talk, then they will benefit if you conduct role plays in front of the class or maybe hold public speaking activities where they are free to share their thoughts and they can practice whatever it is that you are trying to reinforce at that moment or trying to teach them at that moment. Okay, next. Next, regular and useful feedback. I think one of you mentioned this earlier, where the trainer could have consistently done follow-ups to check on the improvements, right? So I think this is pretty self-explanatory. And lastly, rewards. Adults love rewards, right? Let's face it. A lot of us sometimes are money motivated. Some of us are recognition motivated, okay? So you have to take that into consideration. You have to get to know your trainees. You have to get to know your team so that you can maximize their performance and the learning. Okay? So we have already touched on this a number of times for the first couple of hours. Let's move on to the different learning styles. So we have 3 learning styles. First off is the visual learner. So these people learn best by seeing. We also have our auditory learners, and they learn best by hearing. And lastly, we have our kinesthetic learner who learn best by feeling or experiencing. These are some of the things or tips that you can add to your presentation to address these different types of learners. So for visual learners, you can give them a set of instructions and ensure that there are lots of pictures or diagrams. Next up, auditory learner. So give them a set of instructions to read first or read it to them. Okay, pretty self-explanatory naman. So I can move on to the last one. For kinesthetic learners, get straight in and demonstrate how to perform the task. So this is when you model the learning. So usually when I hold customer service classes, I would sometimes either show a video of a mock call, or sometimes I would first pretend to be the CSA or the agent first and have one of them be the customer so that I can demonstrate the skills that I expect from them by the end of the training. Okay, let's now talk about the different barriers to learning. Let's start with the individual. So one of the things to look out for is yung literacy. Another one is numeracy, cultural background, and sometimes people are already set in their ways, di ba? Sabi nga ni JP, sometimes minsan stubborn na tayo. Sometimes we are also anxious or stressed. That's why we cannot observe the learning. And also lack of confidence, right? Because some people are very scared to speak up, diba? Sometimes we are not really confident in how we look in training. So minsan nahihiya tayong sumagot or mag-participate in class. Okay? Next up, barriers to learning for the group. Sometimes when you hold big classes, it's more beneficial to group the individuals into smaller groups. So that way you have a combination of different personalities and they can feed off of each other, and they can also let or all of them can participate and shine instead of pag may isang malaking group. Usually ang downfall niyan is only a couple of people will participate or present. Whereas pag smaller groups, they can take turns, di ba? Okay, let's say in a class of 30, gawa ka ng 6 groups. So each individual will take turns na, okay, ikaw muna ang mag-present ngayon. Later, ikaw naman. Next, ikaw naman. Okay? Next, competitive nature of groups or members. So kahit naman siguro nung college tayo or nung grade school tayo, high school, meron talaga tayong mga classmates who are very, very competitive. Diba? Sila yung usual na nagtitake ng lead sa isang group. And we don't want that because again, we want everyone to experience the learning and we want everyone to be able to participate and present. Lastly, group pressure may inhibit individuals. So sometimes if masyado kang maraming active na people in a group, what do I mean by active? Ito yung mga talagang mahilig mag-recite, mag-participate, strong personalities. Ang tendency, yung ating introverts or the quiet ones, sila yung naiiwan. Sila yung hindi nabibigyan ng opportunity na mag-shine, hindi nakukuha yung opinions nila. Right, cool. Next, to the trainer. So, ano ba ang isang barrier ng learning pagdating sa trainer? Poor presentation skills. So when you are a new trainer, possible na hindi ka pa masyadong magaling sa PowerPoint or whatever platform you are required by your organization to use. And thankfully, there are now a lot of courses available for that. Diba? Next, irritating or distracting mannerisms. I remember when I was with the previous organization that I was working for, I was asked to observe one of the newer trainers. And isang very distracting na mannerism that he always did was to lean on chairs. Diba? Pag face-to-face training ka, so you have a class, dapat you move around, diba? Or you stay in front and dapat yung posture mo very good. Pero what he does is he always leans on chairs. So ang dating sa amin na nag-o-observe sa kanya at sa trainees niya ay tinatamad siya mag-train or pagod siya. Diba? So that's one of the things na kailangan mo i-consider if you're training face-to-face. Okay. Next, style of training is inappropriate. Again, there are different learning styles. There are also different personality types. So it is highly possible for you to feel the need to adjust to address those different styles and those different types of trainees. So again, just because you have a training set and just because you already have a facilitator guide doesn't mean that that's set in stone. That's why it's a guide, diba? So you can be flexible and play around that. Next, may not involve participants. So dito na naman papasok yung mga bias natin. Kasi naman natin kapag trainer ka, tapos you want answers from your class, tapos walang sumasagot, mas madali for you na piliin lang or tawagin yung mahilig sumagot. Diba? That's why, going back to the group, it's better to group people with a balance of different personalities para ma-encourage nila yung each other to take turns answering.